everyone, and welcome back to Soda Chat. I'm Kay, the marketing coordinator here at Above Promotions, and I'm thrilled to dive into a topic that's more critical than ever: learn or die. Today, we're exploring why continuous learning is no longer just a nice to have, but a fundamental skill for preparing for the future of work. To help us explore this important topic, we have our CEO, Ebony Vaz. Ebony's unique background in engineering and her published research on human behavior and statistical data provide her with a distinct and data driven perspective on how to adapt and succeed. Hi, Ebony.
Hello. Hi, Kay.
I'm so excited about this topic. So let's jump right in with our first question. How has the speed of new technology changed which skills matters most at work?
Well, I think it's a good question because right now, I tell you, for us, our business model is always test out new tools. And yeah, we test out a lot of tools often. So technology is definitely changing at a very quick pace. The evolution of technology is moving, I think, way faster than we have seen before. I think we're seeing this thing that is forcing us to adapt. So I think adaptability is going to be key for anyone who wanting to continue in the workforce. We can't continue to think, oh, I used to just write my notes down on a piece of paper. Now we need to think, I text, I speak, and the speech goes to text, and that gets entered in, and that's how my notes get into the system. So we have to be willing and able to adapt. I think the other thing is that we're realizing that data is important. So we often talk about digital literacy. So how someone knows how to use technology. But I think for some businesses, there's going to be this other level called data literacy, where you're going to have to look at being able to process huge amounts of data, being able to take that data, make sure that it's clean, correct, and you're going to be making more decisions because we have access to the data. And I also think that as we're looking ahead, we have so many more risks than we had before. Yeah, before it was, I always like to give this analogy, but when I started in the workforce, we had file rooms. We had rooms that had file cabinets. You go in and pull out the piece of paper, get the information you need, put the file back in the file cabinet, and then the file room was protected via some fire suppression system. However, now all of our files are online, they're in the cloud. And so that means we have new cybersecurity threats. We have new threats to what's happening to the data. What if somebody accidentally, not even on purpose, deletes the data? So we have so many more risks than we had before that I think that it's really causing us to have to take a look and see how technology and humans, whether good intentions or bad, interact with the technology.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that one. Like being adaptable, because I've been actually seeing a lot of different like job postings, things like that, and they are asking people to be like the person that we are looking for should be or should be knowledgeable or at least have basic knowledge about AI. So in a world of constant change, what's the difference between just knowing new information and truly mastering a new skill?
So it's one thing to get a theory of something, and then there's another thing to be able to put it into practice, to put it in action. So let's think about it from theory to action. I can tell someone that they need to use AI for their business, but if I don't give them the steps on how to do it, then it becomes useless to them. So we have to be able to give people the tools to be able to understand the technology, to be able to understand how it can be implemented, and then give them the ability to implement it and see the results. Because I think it's one thing to say AI will make things quicker for someone, but it's another thing for people to actually see the results and know that 2 hours of work that they would have had to endure is now down to like 15, 30 minutes. And so I think that that's being able to put from theory to action is going to be important. But I also think that learning is something that we all should be exploring. We need to think about learning from a standpoint of not just textbook learning, but what we call experience based learning. So, this is where we're thinking about the hands on experience, we're thinking about scenario based training and opportunities to practice the skills that you learn. So, whenever we're doing like a crisis communications playbook or tabletop exercise, we're going from what are the theories, what are the scenarios that could possibly come up, and let's go ahead and act them out. Let's see what would happen. Let's see if we can connect the dots, fill any open gaps. Because it's one thing to have instructions on a piece of paper, but it's another thing is when it's time to put it into practice. And so I think that going for an experience based learning, this is a practice that we like to offer with our skills development hub and classes. Anytime we are trying to teach a organization what they need to do, we want to be able to give them the ability to see it and the potential of real world simulations and even real world examples. So being able to understand like what is the end result and then what could be the ROI, the return on investment, in actually knowing this information and actually implementing this information. So then it becomes that you understand the reason why you should learn, the reason why you should implement, because it's going to save the company money. It's going to bring more efficiencies into your organization. And so I know sometimes employees tend to think, oh, if the company saves money, that's a big deal. No big deal. But companies want to look for ways that they can save money so that they can continue the operations of the business. They can continue to provide increases and merit-based increases and commissions and stuff like that. So it's important. It all circles around to what is, I guess, at the ecosystem of a business. And then really just being able to master a skill, it is something that's very rewarding in that. Being able to feel like, hey, I didn't know how to edit a podcast, but guess what? Now I know how to edit a podcast, create a script, invite guests. So these are things that lead to you having this transformative growth, this part of you like mastering some new skill.
Yes, definitely. Personally, I enjoy like doing things like even it's new to me. It's very important that I experience it like firsthand for me to know like really what should I be doing, what should I do next time, what mistake am I doing, what should be improved. So that's really important that we are like doing things or experiencing this skills firsthand. So, how does curiosity help professionals adapt, and what are some simple ways to become more curious in daily life?
So I think curiosity is one of those things that we have to continue to allow. Some people tend to think that curiosity could be closely related to daydreaming or closely related to being slow to move, but it's in those curious states that we get a chance to actually dive in and come up with new solutions. And so that's why I am always an advocate of organizations giving their employees, their team members, their volunteers the avenue to be able to explore and learn new things. If they hear about something that's going on in the industry, regardless if you think it may or may not affect their direct line of work and responsibilities, allowing them to flourish and to get a chance to uncover some new insights, to be able to connect the dots between what this department does and what this department does and how it all affects how the company moves forward, the organization moves forward, the government entity moves forward, and the interactions with the public. I think that's important. I think that when we have people who are curious about wanting to learn more about a particular topic, we need to encourage that. We need to go ahead and allow for that to happen because that becomes a good way for them to flourish in their role, to be able to bring more to the table. We're always looking for new ideas. And this is why, personally, within the company, in my head, more than likely, I would say a good 70% of the time when there's a task to be done or a project that needs to be done, I have a thought process and how I would do it and what I think I would want it to look like. But I want my team members to come up with what they can bring to the table. And being able to do that allows them a chance to bring something that I wouldn't bring. Something, even if the odds of them capturing what I was thinking in my head, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be the best thing. So I want to give some room, some avenues to explore. I want to give people the chance to leverage the resources that they have. I want to tell them about the different tools and technologies. I want them to explore like how it could be implemented, and then let's take a look at what that looks like. Do we need to look at some videos? Do we need to ask some of our colleagues in the industry? So I encourage every team member to allow their team members to seek out new learning opportunities so that they can bring new solutions and opportunities back to the organization. And just because someone goes to a workshop one time and they say, hey, that didn't really do anything, but a couple of workshops later, something else might click, and they may think back to something that they saw at a previous workshop or a previous seminar. So I think that we need to take a look at just constantly giving the opportunities and encouraging people to look for more opportunities to learn. And then finally, leveraging resources, right? Because sometimes you don't know like the best way to equip your team. And so things like our marketing accelerator program that we have, or some of the workshops that we offer with our skills development center, you need to go to places that offer the content that might be a little bit beyond what you would normally do in your everyday workflow. And then that allows you to be able to come have your team members come back and determine, hey, do we need to implement this or no? Or just maybe this is what could potentially be going on in our industry and we need to keep an eye out for it.
I definitely agree. I just remembered like about 3 years ago when I had my interview with you. That is actually one of my favorite things about promotions. Like you're really open. We get to discuss at that time that you are open to us like sharing ideas and being able to like put it into action. And I've really experienced doing that a lot of times. So it's really nice because I get to have the chance to keep learning along the way, and we also have like this weekly team meetings, and we are like encouraged to share what we've learned this week. So yeah, that's very important to like keep people like curious, and that's
Yeah.
how you do that.
I mean, and we are very intent, like you said. It's in the
Mhm.
team meeting agenda. So I don't run the team meetings. You guys run the team meetings. So it's in the
Mhm.
agenda every week. You come back and say, what did you learn for the week? Or you come back and say, what's the new idea that can help with one of our clients, would help with our organization internally, that can help us be more successful. And this is where you have to be very intent on giving people space to be curious, giving people space to learn more. And it's taking that theory again, going from theory to action. Like my theory is I want people to bring their best selves and most creative parts of them to the job every day that they work. And so to do that, I have to go from that theory to the action, and the action is putting it in the team meetings. That action is putting it on the calendar and saying, hey, these trainings are coming up. I think this would be good for you guys to go to it. It's not exactly what you're doing in your daily task, but I think this is something that there's something there that you could explore and see how it's going to help in your current role, and even as you share what you want to do in 10, 20 years from now.
Definitely, definitely. So I I can also say that above promotions, one of the core values of above promotions is really innovation. With all that, so
Yes.
many people feel overwhelmed by the amount of information to learn. So what's one piece of advice for choosing and focusing on the most important skills?
Oh my gosh. So I got a lot of advice here. So you have to learn to filter the information for one. Whew. There are a lot of different newsletters out there. There's probably like a million newsletters. And so where you can learn something new, but you really got to kind of hone in. Like, who are the top 1 to 3 newsletters that you will open every time their mailbox drops? So I think that's a way of learning to filter the information. Which websites are giving you the most information and pertaining to your industry and pertaining to your role in your workforce, and then filter the information. Like, who is that go to? So, we always try to be the go to, so hopefully you think it's us, but you want to learn to filter the information. Even if you have to set up like those, what used to be really called Google Alerts, and I think it still exists, but there's other applications that you can learn to implement that will give you updates as to what's happening based off of certain keywords. So filtering the information. The other part is being humble. You have to understand where you're weak at. So, like, while I can navigate successfully Adobe, Photoshop, Adobe Premiere Pro, Canva, I know that I am not that expert level. I know that, and that's why we have team members to be that expert. So I know that, is this a weakness that I have? Yes. Is it a weakness that I need to focus a lot of attention on? I wouldn't say a lot of attention, but some. So I might need to spend like once a year at least, or twice a year, making sure that I understand what the updates into the software that's happening, so that when it's time to hunker down to use the software, then I'm good to go. So that's a good example of addressing your weaknesses. And then I think the other part is you have to align it with your goals. So while I do like to create things, I do like to edit videos. That is not my majority job. If I did that, book promotions would be in trouble. I have to focus on like the bigger goals, right? So what are the bigger goals for the company? And so how can I align myself as a good leader to make sure that I'm making those decisions? So I'm thinking long term, I'm thinking short term, and the term in between, right? I'm taking the time in between. So I have to make sure that I figure out what's the most important skills and what are the skills that I need, what are the skills the industry needs. And then on top of that, as an agency and a leader, we have to think about the skills that we need to be able to bring to our clients. So those are the things, but I'll finish with this one. We talk about, whenever we do our marketing classes, we talk about SMART goals, making those specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound objectives. So, SMART objectives. So, we do those for our marketing initiatives. We do that whenever we're creating our training and doing our training for people, but you need to actually have a smart objective. So, if whatever that goal is, revenue goals or company goals for the year, you really need to set your learning goals to align with them. And I think that will help you to cut through the noise, help you filter so you're not chasing everything that comes into your inbox.
I definitely agree. It's nice that you mentioned about the weaknesses, because it's definitely important for a person or each individual to think there is always room for improvement or room for opportunities. That is where I think the curiosity and the learning comes in. Like they wanted to keep learning because definitely the world changes constantly, and especially the digital landscape. So it's very important that each individual thinks that they still have room for improvement. So besides traditional education, what are some easy to use tools or platforms for ongoing learning and professional growth?
So you want to take a look at specialized training platforms, specialized training service providers. So for like us, we have our skills development hub. So it's an easy way to get in person or online courses or training programs on different topics. And so you want to be able to locate one of those specialized training providers, such as us. You also want to think about like what kind of expert guidance can you get. So perhaps that guidance could be it's a challenge or it's an accelerator. And so like we have our marketing accelerator that we offer and where people get time to go through and they're guided through as a group community. So that's another way of getting that guidance exactly through. And so you're not just learning it on your own and it's not just one time, but it's a series of learning objectives that you can go through. Podcasts are good ways of finding that. I like to think that, what we've been doing here, being able to give people a chance to get professional advice from experts. But I see, like for us, we have podcasts that we like to listen to too. So we also like to be able to hear what other people are saying, and it's always good to hear how someone else is processing new information and how they're processing these potential processes and tools for getting things done. And I think that peer to peer learning. So being able to learn from one another. So, like a good example of that would be whenever we have interns coming on, we try to give them a chance to learn from one another, allow them a chance to meet. There is nothing I think that could be more less stressful than peer to peer learning. So having that chance to learn without having to go through a very rigid course load. So peer to peer learning is another good way. And then having an online repository. So we'll we have folders and folders of training documents. Right. So if you have a question about web development or turning over a website or something like that, our team can go in and do a search website and then it comes back with all of these different training documents. So I feel as though having a very curated, one stop online tool, online repository, being able to take a look at some of those informations is really good. And I also think the ability to be able to share, whether it's some type of online chat, whether it's some type of online Slack group, etc., being able to give people the opportunity to communicate within those and drop information that they've learned, I think that would be also pretty good as well. So,
I think I'd like to add one more thing because sometimes I do that. Like with Facebook groups or online communities or different organizations that you can join to, like you can just like go into that group and search that specific question, like you don't know that, or you don't know that it's already been asked before, and then it comes up in the search results that you did. So it's also important that you are joining to different organizations in the industry that you are at. So looking 5 to 10 years ahead, what is a skill that might seem minor today but will be very important for success?
so if I looked at my crystal ball and I thought, okay, what would be the skill set? I got a few. So I think emotional intelligence is one of those. I think we focus on technology a lot and we focus on the hard skills of knowing how to either code the technology or implement the technology. But I think because of the fact that we are seeing, good example, we're seeing Google searches evolve. So before you could search with only just a keyword, now you can do a search by asking a conversational question or making a conversational statement. So I think that there's this level of emotional intelligence that we're going to have to look at. Just because we have access to the tools doesn't mean we know how to use them. And I think there's going to be this area of where we are getting these answers straightforward, etc., but we're going to be missing the way to deliver that information. So it's one thing for me to say, go do this. And it's another thing and says, hey, we have this task. We think we need to go ahead and get this completed within the next 24 hours. Those are two totally different statements. And I think being able to understand emotional intelligence is going to help you be able to continue to cultivate a team, because you're going to need people to work in the workplace, and you're still going to want people to want to turn up into the workplace that they go to. So I think emotional intelligence is one. I think the ethical responsibility for technology is going to be another thing that we have to consider as we look at using AI and how that goes, and making sure we have data privacy, we don't have bias. I think that that's going to be another area that we have to explore. Rapid problem solving, and I hate to say that, but yeah, because people have data at their fingertips, it's going to force us to make decisions quicker. And I think that's going to disrupt every single industry. So let's give us, for example, for healthcare industry. If you are a doctor and someone calls in, they're going to expect you to provide them with information sooner than later. They're not going to want you to take the time to look through 20 pages of their medical history. But hey, doc, I've got a fever and I've had it for 3 days, and I have X number of different prescriptions. I've got all of this history. What's the resolution? Okay, I want to feel better. Thanks. And then move on. So I think that this rapid problem solving is going to be key. I think we're seeing it now, people wanting answers like sooner than later. And then I really, so, I am a STEM girl through and through. I am science, technology, engineering for sure. I've got that engineering degree, mathematics. I am a STEM girl through and through. But the humanities, history, the arts, English, all of that is going to be extremely important. That's going to be the stuff that makes this technology more palatable. So I think that that's going to be something. And then, my last point is storytelling. Storytelling, storytelling. I don't care how much
Yeah.
technology we have and use it. If you want someone to use it, you better have a good story to tell it with it. I think that something to resonate with the audience is going to be extremely important. I just don't know how we're going to get away from storytelling and being able to communicate in a way that someone wants to hear and someone's going to remember. So I'm going to end it with storytelling. What about you,
I
Kay? I want to
definitely
hear.
agree.
What do you think?
I definitely agree with that one. For me, I was actually thinking about what you mentioned, humanitarian, as well as the storytelling, because definitely with all the AI going on in the digital world, people still want to see that or want to feel that emotional connection with each brands that they are encountering. So definitely, people should still look into ensuring that they know how to resonate with their audience.
Yeah, and it's funny is and this is something that has always kind of happened, but I've noticed in particularly this year, there have been more ads that have been served to me that are commercials that make some type of reference back to what would be my childhood. And so it's just these little tiny little nods, like a song that nods back to that childhood, or a saying that nods back to that. And I think it's like those things that kind of give you that warm and fuzzy, like, and there's a good majority of people have good moments from their childhood or good moments from other parts of their lives. And as we continue to age, Ron and I will say, hey, I bet you there's people watching this that they have no idea what that reference is. Like, it's referencing to something back to when we were younger, and I think that that nostalgia feel seems to be something that I've noticed that people are creeping into with their commercials. But something else that I have noticed, and this is not to be political because I don't want to go down that road, but I've noticed that more and more people, because of all the changes that have been happening in politics around the world, more and more people have been diving into history a bit, and they're like going back to kind of figure out, like, well, what did happen when, like, the
Yeah,
Nazis, or what did happen when this country colonized another country, or what did happen to that sea lions, that there used to be so many there, and then what happened to this these butterflies and these rare animals and things. So it's going to be very important that we grasp and don't lose that humanity part, that part that made everything what it is today.
definitely, definitely, because everything that is happening in the present and will be happening in the future has something to do with the past. So definitely people have to like look back and see what's going on and why it's happening right now.
Yeah, yeah. And that happens in business, right?
Yeah,
Because there's business cycles, and there's times where people are looking back to the Great Depression, and people are looking back to the housing crisis, and people are looking back to other things to make business decisions. And so people look back to what marketing campaigns worked for them in the past. So there's this thing about history that is very prominent. And I hope that in 5 or 10 years, we haven't lost the significance of what it means to use it.
definitely. So that was an incredibly insightful and practical discussion on the importance of learning. To quickly recap, we explored how to identify and prioritize the most critical skills to help you thrive in a changing landscape. And we also dove into the mindset of curiosity and the most effective tools for continuous learning to prepare for the future. Thank you so much for sharing your invaluable expertise with us today, Ebony. And we truly hope this episode has inspired our listeners to invest in their most important asset, their own knowledge. So, to dive deeper into this topic and explore more marketing and tech insights, be sure to check out our other Soda Chat episodes. You can find them on our Spotify or YouTube channel. And don't forget to connect with Ebony Vaz on LinkedIn for more thought leadership and insights on the future of marketing and technology. Thanks for tuning in to Soda Chat, and until then, keep innovating and achieving new heights.